Good evening. Thank you very much. We've already started the party, so I will keep the remarks short as we get going here tonight. But I'm Steve Perkins. I'm the Executive Director of the Vermont Historical Society, and I want to thank you all so very much for being here tonight and joining us for the third installment of Vermont Eats. Back in 2019, the Vermont Historical Society decided to pilot a project based on a project that was done in Maine called, you can imagine, Maine Eats. And it took its cues from a 1930s WPA writers project that was never finished, that was meant to send writers around the country and write about the various foodways throughout the United States. And we found this fascinating and interesting. And how could we as an organization create a series of events that explore culture and community through food? What a fun thing to do. So we did our first event in 2019. Of course, we plan to do them every year. You know what happened. So we had a wonderful event last year, and now this year, and look at this, we've got 100 people in here celebrating Little Jerusalem here in Burlington, and I'm so very excited for that. I have a, thank you. When we're thinking about food and culture, I had a quote from the historian David Hackett Fisher. And this ties into the idea of regionality and how do we understand region and how people live there and how they move into that place, how they move out of that place, and how do we understand it. And as a historian, he had two definitions for region, and they're tied together. So a region is a physical entity formed by terrain, soil, climate, resources, and systems of production, and a cultural phenomena created by common customs and experiences. So how do those experiences, those customs that come into a place, meld with the physical space itself to create a new idea of community? And I think that is very exciting, and that's what we're going to start to look at through these programs and what we're looking at tonight. So this is the type of exploration that we're doing now as the Vermont Historical Society. We tell Vermont's story, we preserve Vermont's story. You all know that, many of you are members. If you're not a member, please consider becoming a member of the Historical Society. Information's on the back of your program, and you can talk to Emily Lev or Daphne Kitty Landis from our staff here. So that's my plug for that. And I definitely want to thank all of the donors who made this possible tonight, as well as the volunteers. So I know the volunteers are somewhat sitting in the back, so thank you very much. This program is truly a partnership, and you're going to be hearing from our partners next, but we couldn't do it without the celebration tonight, without the Lost Mural project and tonight's host, Javi Zedek. And we couldn't do it without you, and thank you so much for attending. I have one other note. Is Jennifer Wool in the house? Yes, happy birthday. So again, thank you. Without further ado, I would like to introduce Jeff Potash.
Hi, I'm Jeff Potash. I am a member of the Ohavi Zedek Synagogue, president of the congregation. On behalf of the Ohavi Zedek community, I want to offer you a warm welcome here tonight. It is a simcha, translation, joyful celebration to have you in our home. We're grateful that you're here. As one of several congregants who helped prepare tonight's meal, I wanted to explain briefly what you'll be eating. Please understand, much as our original founders in the 1880s and all who have followed over the past 137 years, we maintain a kosher kitchen here at OZ. We do so to accommodate everyone. It is a welcoming action on our part, a statement of inclusivity. In practical terms, for your purposes, what it means is that we cannot mix milk and meat. And so we have made the decision for this meal to serve a vegetarian and dairy meal. No meat, sorry. What that means in some cases, though, is that traditional meat dishes have been modified using vegetable ingredients. I encourage you to try something that you haven't tried before. Still, our goal is to share dishes that would have likely been served in Little Jerusalem 100 years ago. Some will be familiar, as in the case of potato latkes with applesauce or sour cream, or cheesecake. Others, perhaps like cabbage balls, kolishkas, and other items, will be unfamiliar. Again, be brave, try them, they're delicious. There's a classic Jewish joke, the classic joke of the Jewish woman who, after being asked about a meal she had recently been served, commented, quote, "The food was inedible in such small portions." I submit that this evening you will find the dishes our OZ volunteers prepared to be both tasty and plentiful. We'll put food out shortly. There's lots of food. Please eat. SS, mein Kind. Take a doggy bag home. Enjoy. Thank you all for being here once again. And I'll turn this over to Aaron Goldberg, who's the president of the Lost Mural.
Thank you, everyone, and welcome to Ahava Zedek, and welcome on behalf of the Lost Mural Project and Vermont Historical Society. I'd first like to thank our key sponsors noted in your program for their commitment to the educational missions of the Vermont Historical Society and the Lost Mural Project. Thank you also to our wonderful musicians for our special musical program tonight. All their names are not in the program, so I am going to state them. It's Marty Fogel on clarinet and saxophone, Jeff Bernstein on drums, Michael Schachter on keyboard, Dan Silverman on trombone, and John Thompson Figueroa on upright bass. My apologies, John. Many thanks to Shelburne Vineyards for tonight's wine offerings. To CCTV and Videosyncrasies for recording tonight's event. Lost Mural Project also wishes to extend its appreciation to Ahava Zedek for hosting the Lost Mural and the Lost Mural Project and tonight's dinner, and to President Jeff Potash, OZ Director Brett Smith, Raul Guevara, and Steve for their organizational support. Many, many thanks to Ahava Zedek, Jeff, and their kitchen chefs for making our culinary delights this evening. I also want to give a shout out to the Lost Mural Project Board for their good works as we transition from the Lost Mural Project restoration mission to our educational mission. To Sam Gruber for his enduring academic talks and blogging support of the Lost Mural Project over more than the last decade. This evening's Vermont Eats program is the result of extensive collaborative work between the OZ Archives, the Lost Mural Project, and Vermont Historical Society. On behalf of the Lost Mural and Ahava Zedek, we would extend our heartfelt appreciation to Vermont Historical Society for the courageous decision to feature the Vermont Jewish community for the 2024 Vermont Eats event. Jeff and I have been working closely with the Vermont Historical Society and its director, Stephen Perkins, and his multi-talented team to share the story of Burlington's Little Jerusalem community. Steve has been one of our closest advisors, helping the Lost Mural Project sharpen its focus as we do our educational planning. Jeff and I have now been working with the OZ Archives for 39 years. As historians of Burlington's Jewish community and as Lost Mural Project directors, we have been hosted by Vermont Historical Society in person and through Zoom to present programs. Last month, we also partnered to create the Vermont History Day Lost Mural and Little Jerusalem History Prize awarded by Vermont Historical Society to students who participate in the Vermont History Day, which is an annual event. On another note, Steve, we did not talk about it, but my first papers on Little Jerusalem were done for David Hackett Fisher, who was then teaching at Brandeis and taught at Brandeis for 52 years. So what you're seeing tonight is the beginning of that in 1974 for David Hackett Fisher. In our efforts to bring our community's history to Vermont school children, Jeff and I have also shared the Lost Mural with over 500 high school students just during the last 2 years. Special thanks also to Vermont Historical Society's Eileen Corcoran, Daphne Kinney-Landis, and Emily Lev for preparing the stellar program for the 2024 edition of Vermont Eats, featuring Vermont immigrants, Burlington's diverse communities, our Jewish East European cooking heritage, and our immigrant art pieces. I can't thank you enough for this program. It is an incredible program. This particular program, which I did not see until yesterday, includes many personal genealogical ties and food memories for me, personally. The program includes a photo of Isaac and Abe Rosenberg, grocers for Burlington's Little Jerusalem community. Abe is my grandfather and Isaac is my great-grandfather. The OZ cookbook that is featured is dedicated to my grandmother, Sarah Flax Rosenberg, who was the supervisor of the OZ kitchens for many decades, and who was then followed by my mother, Joyce Rosenberg Goldberg, who performed the same role for a long time. Jeff and I spent a lot of time during Hebrew school in the OZ kitchens getting snacks and eating foods prepared by many of the persons whose recipes you are partaking of tonight. Many of you have also seen the Copper Ark tonight with its copper work done by Morris Wool. The Copper Ark is another very important project that is near and dear to Jeff and myself. We've spent the last few years negotiating to make sure that it would be relocated to Ahava Zedek when the original Ahava Zedek building was sold. If you didn't see it, please do. It's in the back corner on the south wall. And in that room also there's a very small wooden hand-carved model of the Copper Ark on the east wall nearest the Copper Ark. That was carved by my grandfather's father, Cantor William Flax. It has just been restored by Jenny Baker, who's one of the conservators who worked on the Lost Mural also. The model that you see was also done by Frederick Bryce, and we were able to buy that at auction with the assistance of the Vermont Historical Society and Joe Perrin from the Winooski Historical Society. The Lost Mural Project has also been assisting Ahava Zedek with the rescue and relocation of the Copper Ark. Now that it has been restored and rescued, we look forward to expanding our joint programs between the Vermont Historical Society, the Lost Mural Project, and Ahava Zedek through online, mobile, and on-site educational exhibits about Burlington's Little Jerusalem and immigrant neighborhoods. Our next project, which we've already started, is a mapping project which will highlight the old North End immigrant maps of the neighborhoods. We hope to do this online, and we hope to have graphic displays that you can also pick up and do a self-guided tour of the immigrant neighborhoods. We look forward to sharing our stories with you and hearing more of your stories at other events and tasting your community's traditional foods. Thank you, best wishes, and we hope you enjoy this Vermont Eats evening. And as the food is laid out, we will have two board directors of the Lost Mural Project, one Tom Torty and Bob Duncan. Tom will be taking 3 tables at a time from the front. They will go to the right side, and Bob will be taking 3 tables from the back, and they will go to the left side, my left. And as soon as those people have been served, we will bring up the other tables. Thank you so much. All right, see you later.
I'd like to introduce the members of the band. We have Michael Schachter on keyboards. And we have John Thompson Figueroa on the upright bass. And Jeff Bernstein on drums. Dan Silverman on trombone. And yours truly, Marty Fogel, on clarinet and saxophone. The next few pieces we're going to play are from the Yiddish theater. The first one is called Bells, Mein Städtele Bells, from the 1932 musical Ghetto Song, music by Alex Olshanetsky of Lithuanian descent, lyrics by Jacob Jacobs from Romania, and sung by the well-known Russian singer Isa Kramer. It's a song about the city of Belz, which is near the current city of Lvov, Ukraine. We're going to follow that with Vladimir Biskushin.
Zach, because he is our new director of community engagement.
By Ukrainian-born Shalom Sekunda for the 1932 Yiddish musical I Would If I Could. It became a worldwide hit in 1937 with English lyrics by Sammy Kahn and Saul Chaplin, sung by the Andrews Sisters. And we're going to follow that with a very well-known piece that was very popular called Shine Vidi Lavana, Pretty Like the Moon. It's a 1938 song by Joseph Rushinsky, and he was from a town near Vilna, Lithuania. It was a very popular Yiddish song, originally sung by Menashe Skolnick from Warsaw, Poland. And Menashe Skolnick was a popular Yiddish theater actor and was on the Goldbergs TV show. I remember a scene, I believe from that show, with Menashe Skolnick when someone walks into a store and says, "You're the manager?" And Menashe Skolnick says, "I'm not the manager, I'm the manager." So, all right, so here we go. Here's a little music.
You're going to go in there.
Where?
In the lobby.
Sandy was a French teacher. You had some talented kids.
Yeah, we enjoyed your children.
Thank you so much. And all the Jeff Potter's memoir.
Yeah, and your wife was
We're both in total immersion. those of you who are interested, the archives room is open for touring and display. Richard Kirshner, our coordinating conservator, is in the Lost Mural lobby, and Shauna Ratner is in the Copper Ark room, and our main sanctuary is open so you can also see the Ark in the main sanctuary. So please go in and take tours if you'd like and ask questions. They're all open for your access, and we are delighted that you're all visiting us tonight.
Jewish American immigrant composers can not only compose songs that were either out of the klezmer era of music or just any other kind of Jewish music, there were more than a couple of composers that composed music that became very popular in the American mainstream. One such composer, of course, was Irving Berlin, who is said to have written more than 1,500 songs. He was born Israel Day and was from Siberia in Imperial Russia. These guys first appeared in the first talkie motion picture, The Jazz Singer with Al Jolson in 1927. It was also recorded by many, many artists, jazz artists, mainstream pop artists. Berlin also wrote Alexander's Ragtime Band, White Christmas, God Bless America, Easter Parade, Cheek to Cheek, and many others. And Mac the Knife, we will follow Blue Skies with Mac the Knife, is written by Kurt Weill from his 1928 musical, Three Penny Opera. The German lyrics are by Bertolt Brecht, and the English lyrics by Ogden Nash. Mac the Knife was recorded by many artists, including Louis Armstrong, and was a top of the charts hit with Bobby Darin in 1958-59. Kurt Weill was born in Saxony, Prussia, and fled Nazi Germany in 1933. So here's Blue Sky. This is a piece called the Gassen Legumi, which was performed by Congo's orchestra in 1923. It's called a street lagoon, and just you can picture musicians marching down the street for various different occasions. Your Gossen Lagoon. To finish our presentation, we'll perform a medley of 3 pieces from the klezmer repertoire. We begin with Lo mir sich überbeten, Let's Reconcile, written by Solomon Rosowski, a Latvian Chazan who taught at the Jewish Theological Seminary. It was chosen because we know that Ben Zion Black, painter of the Lost Mural, had the recordings of Isa Kramer, the famous Russian Jewish singer who did sing this song. We follow that with Schlenke's Freya by Russian-born Schlenke Beckerman, well-known clarinetist and composer. He also played with the Abe Schwartz Orchestra. And we conclude the medley with Bolvar Ala-Naftuli, also known as Nifty's Freya. This was written and performed by Naftuli Brandwein from Galicia and the Austro-Hungarian Empire. He is considered to be one of the top klezmer musicians of the 20th century. Here we go.
I don't know if you only got 2.
I don't know.
How many you make? Those are empty.
I don't know.
Is this taken?
No?
Here, we got 3.
Join us.
Then I have to sit here.
you've been listening to the music of the Marty Fogel Quintet, also known as Thread of Blue. And we have Michael Schachter on piano. Let's hear it for Michael. John Thompson on upright bass. Jeff Bernstein on drums. Ken Silverman on trombone. And yours truly, Marty Fogel. Thank you so much. Have a great evening.
So, I'm not going to read Samuel Gruber's academic background. It's in your program, but needless to say, Sam has been a stalwart supporter of the Lost Mural project since we began, and he has been advising us and following our journey, and has been a part of it. He has lectured on behalf of the Lost Mural project, I believe, in New York at the Center for Jewish History and at the Lithuanian Embassy in Washington, D.C., and in Lithuania, and in Israel also. So without further ado, Samuel Gruber.
Thanks. Can you hear me with this contraption on? Okay, thanks. So there is a little biography. I have a web page with many of my publications if you need them. There's also a lot of what I've researched and written that's made its way into the literature about the Lost Mural. And then most recently we're getting into the Copper Ark, so it's kind of fun. And I'll allude to that in the talk that I'm going to give you. It will be a romp through the history of these artworks, these synagogue artworks, and I'll try to relate them to some other situations, artistic, historical, social, religious, and so on. I want to say that I'm very pleased to be here because, as Aaron said, I wasn't at the actual start. I wasn't here in 1986 when this picture was taken, and Aaron begged the then new owner of the Chai Adam, the former Chai Adam synagogue, not to destroy the mural, but merely to cover it over. But when it was revealed in 2012, I guess, or 2013, 2010, I did get involved. And when it was shown to still be intact, albeit very damaged, under the wall of the apartment in the former synagogue. I mean, imagine living all those years, students and others living in that apartment, not knowing what was behind their wall. I was asked to come and give my opinion, saying, "What is this? Is this worth saving? I mean, is this something remarkable?" And I came to the first time to Burlington, and I entered this former apartment, and what you're seeing right here, these are pictures I took at that time. I was stunned. My jaw dropped, and I said, "Yeah, this is extraordinary. This is extraordinary both as an aspect of American Jewish art, but it's also a remarkable tie to the old world traditions of synagogue painting in Lithuania, in Poland, Belarus, Ukraine, Romania, most of which we've lost because of the destruction of the Holocaust." What I subsequently learned is that there were many other examples of synagogue wall painting in America created by Jewish immigrants from the old world, from the late 19th into the early 20th century, up through the Depression, really. But we've lost most of those as well, too. But back in 2012, 2013, I didn't know about those examples, and nobody else did either. I'm an art historian, an architectural historian. I have a specialty in Jewish art and architecture. I've been working to protect and preserve, document historic Jewish sites around the world since the late 1980s. And this was just terra incognita. This was area that we hadn't explored. So besides launching the project to protect, preserve, and eventually to physically move, as you see here, the mural, and Rick Kirshner's here who orchestrated a lot of that, and to bring it here and install it in this beautiful 1950s building at Mojave Zedek. This project also launched research, at least for me, which is still continuing, and continued as recently as yesterday, because I was in Montreal yesterday photographing a synagogue from the 1920s, which still has some interesting wall paintings, which I'll show you some pictures of later. So, oops, this is going so fast. You've heard a little bit about Little Jerusalem, and it's here, it's written about in the program. Little Jerusalem, the north side of Burlington, was not an uncommon type of place in America around the turn of the 20th century. Jewish immigrants, first there were German-speaking Jewish immigrants from Central Europe who settled all throughout the country, the Northeast, the South, the West, first as peddlers and then opening shops. Many of these, though, came as young men, some as early as 1848, and they tended to, with success or without success, they tended to be absorbed into the larger Christian majority population. They didn't really put down Jewish roots. So there were Jewish communities in many of the places where we know there were Jewish people. There's still Jewish names on some of the stores and the movie theaters and street names. Sometimes these people ended up being mayors of towns. But the Jewish communities in a lot of these places didn't start, and this is true in Burlington too, till the late 19th century when larger numbers of Eastern European Jews came after 1880. And there were enough people, but also technology was changing, so you had trains now that could bring in kosher food. You could have a store where you could sell goods because you could get them rather than relying on a horse and cart going around as a solitary peddler. But for a variety of reasons, part of them demographic, part of them technological, part of them political, by 1900 there were established Jewish communities from every end of the country, north, south, east, west, and Burlington was no exception. The remarkable thing about Burlington is so much of the physical fabric of that community that really began to grow after 1900 is still with us today. And that's the Little Jerusalem on the north side, now like student housing and other people there, but the buildings are still pretty much what you would have found several generations ago. My own family came from my mother's side came from a Litvak family, that is from Lithuania, like the Burlington Jews, and they settled in a similar place, but in Texas, in Brenham, Texas. But the history of those Texan Litvaks, and with their my Yiddish-speaking Orthodox Jews in Texas, you wouldn't believe it, but it's true. Is very similar to some of the history in Burlington, and I'm not going to talk about food, even though I was afraid that I was going to have to do that because of the nature of the evening. But I will say the stories I got from my grandmother, who was born in 1895, of her girlhood in Brenham, Texas, in this very, very Orthodox family in a Lithuanian shtetl there, did not make an evening of eats that appealing, because she talked mostly, her life was milking the cow and plucking chickens, and she said, we just ate chicken all the time, chicken. She said she never even ate beef till after she was married. But vegetables? No, there were no vegetables. It's like, okay. So Jewish cooking's come a long way, actually. But it was a subsistence type of food, and even latkes and applesauce, it's because in the fall there were plenty of potatoes. That's what people had to eat because they could store them through the year. And apples the same way. And if you wanted something sweet, you probably couldn't afford honey, but apples gave you that sweetness. So you made something delicious out of necessity. And Jews were hardly alone. I mean, every immigrant group has these similar sorts of stories. But let's talk about the physical space, because Jews did make community. And they settled together, and it's what we call chain migration. People would come over, they make enough money, and then they would bring their relatives over, their wives, their children, their brothers, their cousins. And then they would set them up in business. And so you have these family connections. And Little Jerusalem in Burlington's a very close-knit history. Very close-knit, but, and by the way, this is Aaron back when I first met him. He has a little more gray hair now. But he's showing me the signs in Little Jerusalem, and you can see the sign out in the lobby, the same map. Just a few views of what it was like. You see, it's all wooden architecture. Of course, we're up near forests and whatnot, but it would have been very familiar to the shtetls of Lithuania and Latvia and Belarus, all of which have similar wooden type of architecture and mud, lots of mud and cold winters. It was familiar. Many Jews were set up retail stores, but they were familiar with the life of lumbermen and trappers and others. It was not a entirely new environment. But they created community, and you would think that's a good thing, lots of unity. But when there's Jewish community, there's also Jewish tension and rivalry and factions. And very quickly, this Jewish community splintered into different congregations. And in Little Jerusalem, there were 3 Jewish congregations, Ohavi Zedek, and this is the successor to Ohavi Zedek. It was the first and the most successful of those congregations. And there was another one, a split off, Chai Adam, which is where the Lost Mural comes from. And then a third one, Ahavet Gerim, which was a much smaller congregation, but they're the ones that inherited the original Ohavi Zedek building when Ohavi Zedek and Chai Adam merged around 1939 because they couldn't make a go of it in the Depression, being separate. Ahavet Gerim went alone. But then when the new, larger, unified Ohavi Zedek congregation moved in 1952 and built this building, Ahavet Gerim moved into the old building where the Copper Ark comes from. We'll look at that in just a minute. I should say, by the way, it's not in my talk, but I want to mention this building, this modern building, it's a very beautiful modern building. I've written about it, and to my knowledge, it's the first and one of the only synagogues designed by a woman. So I believe Ruth Freeman of the Freeman firm was the designer in about 1952, and the sanctuary, if you haven't had a chance to go in, it's just an exquisite modern space. And some of the lines in the overall building are remarkable too. So these are 3 little buildings that all coexisted as synagogues, and you can see they're a little bit different, but they're all modest in their size and form. Now, the Chai Adam synagogue is the one we know the most. We've been working on for the last 10, 12 years because of the Lost Mural. The Lost Mural was a sign of bravado. The congregation, as kind of a thumb in the nose probably to the older and possibly wealthier Ohavi Zedek, hired a young Lithuanian artist to spruce the place up in 1910. And this is Ben-Zion Black, whose picture you see out there. And Ben-Zion Black then ended up settling here, having a long career, opening a sign painting business. And there was definitely competition to make these synagogues better. Ohavi Zedek, let me jump forward a bit. No, we'll come back to it in a minute. Ohavi Zedek, the one here on the left, the brick one, was originally just a wood frame, very simple wood frame building without a foundation, with very, very modest, almost shed-like structure, but places where people could come together and worship. The men could have their daily prayers and weekly prayers. But in around 1900, 1901, 1902, they gave it a facelift. They repaired it structurally. They faced it with brick. They may have made it a little bit bigger. I think they added a mikveh, which is a ritual bath, underneath the building at that time. So they were definitely upping the ante. And then a few years later, Chai Adam decorated the interior of their new building, which was a former, I think it was a former house. I've forgotten, but it's a very simple structure that you see on the upper right. And inside, we only have this one photograph of the interior, what it looked like when it was operating, but it gives us a lot of indication of the lavish decoration that Ben-Zion Black painted. and we're going to look at that in more detail. But what I want you to see underneath are inscriptions in Hebrew, which you can sort of see there. Those of you in the back, I know you're going to have to strain your eyes for this, but these are Hebrew prayers. There's the Matovu prayer about how goodly are thy tents, O Jacob, and this is the prayer that men say when they enter the synagogue in the morning. There's fragments, just a few words, but we can identify a reading from Psalm 16, line 8. I have set the Lord before me always. So these are very common prayers. They would have been known to every observant Jew. It rooted them in this place, but it also tied them to the old country. But what's remarkable about Black's decoration is the pictorial quality, and now that it's been restored, the brilliance of the colors, but also we see the quality of the painting, which is quite unexpected given the relatively modest circumstances of the Jews of this time. We think that Benzion Black, was trained as a painter, not as like a Michelangelo or Rembrandt, but probably as a theatrical painter doing backdrops for theaters, and purportedly he did some of this in Boston before he came to Burlington, although the way I've read it, the facts are not clear, but it's his painting style suggests the type of painting that was common, what we call decorative painting, architectural decorative painting, for theater sets, for restaurants and hotel lobbies. All of these things at the late 19th, early 20th century tended to be brilliantly decorated in this way. He was quite expert in what we call trompe l'oeil, the trick of the eye. So having architectural elements that actually led you into space, even though they're two-dimensional, you get a sense of the three-dimensionality. And this mural, which is now beautiful outside, is really strong in those qualities, because not only are you drawn into the architecture and you believe the texture of the various brilliantly colored drapery, but you can see through the columns and you get to a kind of paradisiacal landscape behind. And there are many different levels. It's almost like levels of an onion. You peel them away, you can get the depth of that. And this is something he might have learned as a theater painting, because that's what we see when we would go to a stage performance, painting that's supposed to lead you in. It's a flat drop behind the performance, but you're supposed to be seeing out of windows and forests and fields beyond. These pictures are before the final restoration. This is actually the first time that I've seen the mural fully complete. I was last here for the unveiling after the important conservation treatment after the mural had been installed here, and now I see it in its really stunning character, and just kudos to all of the conservators who did this work. I remember seeing that, walking into the apartment building and seeing all the paint flaking off, and it was so discolored. The old, it looked green because of the discoloration, and when you have different colors combining, they create a green, and the reds all look different, and everything. And to strip that off layer by layer has been an extraordinary work, and you can see pictures outside that Rick has put there, which show all the different stages as one layer of dirt comes off after another. It was common to see people smoked, and there was coal heating, and all these things discolor murals, and so it was common for murals to darken, and people might put glue or other kinds of varnishes on to make them shine and brighten for a while, but these would darken too. Rick can actually give a better and maybe more accurate account of the conservation problems, but revealing the original colors of a wall painting that had been neglected for so long, is just a very exciting activity. So there were considerable losses in the paint, which had been infilled, but fortunately it was well photographed before the wall was put on it in 1986, so anything that was lost could be fully replicated with removable, reversible techniques. So here's looking out that landscape, It's much clearer now if you see it out front, but you can see these wonderful birds flying, and then borders, some of which have been either lost or they're not included here, but they have been preserved, show a kind of slightly Art Nouveau influence on Black's work. The level of detail and the quality of the painting was quite high, I think, in some of the lesser details, the fringes on the draperies and whatnot. So what we are seeing is a kind of conflation of many different elements of the sacred and the paradisiacal in Jewish thought and belief. We're in a synagogue. So a synagogue is the successor to the temple. The temple was the successor to the Mishkan, or the tabernacle that most of you know about, from Exodus, built in the desert, and where the Holy Ark was. And then the temple and the Mishkan sort of replaced early altars. And then beyond all of this is the kind of a heavenly realm, or this paradisiacal setting. And we see all of this brought together, sort of smooshed together, but in a beautifully, highly descriptive and highly articulated way. The colors in the drapery probably suggest those that are mentioned in Exodus when they're describing the building of the Mishkan, the blues and the purples. So there's a lot to look at. There's a lot to look at here. And this would have been such a change from, I don't want to be accusatory here about Burlington, but I can imagine in 1910, things were kind of drab. You still had a lot of wood architecture, beginning to get brick architecture. Streets are beginning to be paved, but a lot of them aren't. Everyday life was tough. And then you walk into this synagogue and you have this enormous burst of color and action and space opening. And it wasn't just the apse, wasn't just this part of the synagogue that was decorated. He painted the ceiling, and we know there were little cherubs up there with mandolins. He was a mandolin painter himself, and there were clouds, and it was quite remarkable. So this is a very unusual, but how unusual was it? A very unusual aspect of Jewish culture, Jewish visual culture. In Jewish intellectual life, thought people like Martin Buber and others, they were writing around 1900 that Jews didn't have a visual culture, that Jews were actually physically incapable of making art, of appreciating art. Jews were people of the book, of the word, the law. Now that's a lot of nonsense, and we know how many great Jewish artists there have been in the 20th and now the 21st century, but we also now know through scholarship that Jewish visual culture was very rich. It wasn't as diverse maybe as Christian culture, because there tended to be a reluctance to have figurative art, but overall, the abundance of art in so many different places was quite remarkable. And slowly this is become more widespread. But routinely, I speak with rabbis who are still being trained in Jews are people of the book. They don't care about building. Well, they do care about building. Anytime they've been allowed, given the opportunity, they've built great synagogues. Aaron was just in Amsterdam, and he saw the Portuguese synagogue and the great Ashkenazi synagogue there, built in the 16th century. In the 17th century. And they cared about these things. And the same is true with visual art, and this is good evidence of. So Black. So what happened to Black? Did he become an artist? No, but he did remain involved in visual culture. He became a sign painter. His business was Ben Black Signs of the Best Kind, and he had a long career in Burlington, was a fixture in society, as far as I know. He was not a synagogue goer. I heard that he never even belonged to a synagogue as a member of these competing synagogues, but he was a great believer in Yiddishkeit, in Yiddish culture, and he wrote plays and poetry and newspaper columns, and his papers are up here at the university, and someone still needs to study them, and most of them are in Yiddish. But he was a promoter of Yiddish culture in concerts and plays, and these are some of the programs that were in that collection. And so by looking at his life, it gives us a broader view of some of the culture the Jewish culture, the Yiddish culture here in Burlington. Not the visual arts, but these other arts that are very important. Okay, so here's the Ohavizedek Synagogue. This is the one that was built probably around 1887, early 90s. The congregation had been founded shortly before. It was just a very simple wood frame building, and then around 1901, 1902, it was 1903, here it says, faced in brick. And then in the 1930s, around 31, the rabbi cantor William Flax, who was an ancestor of Aaron, and one of his congregants, Morris Wool, and I guess, is this a Wool descendant whose name I heard earlier, or someone, am I right in that, or I heard someone, Janice, is Janice Wool? Are you the granddaughter, or great-granddaughter, or? Great-granddaughter, okay, so he was the patron of this, of a new ark in the synagogue. They expanded the synagogue in 1931, 2 bays, and they gave it kind of a concrete base, and they added this new ark wall. I thought it was the east wall, but apparently it's the north wall, which is unusual. But I'm going to show you, and this is what you'll see in a minute. What they created, and part of it is now reconstructed in the other room. But I want you to see here in this image, you can just see it they look like postage stamps for you in the back, but the point is the look of that building was very common, and we find it in immigrant synagogues all around the country. I'm finding more and more of them, but many of them have been destroyed, so only a few still survive in their original form. But this is what it looked like inside. And when I first visited this, I was stunned because there are not that many of these synagogues still extant. Now, of course, we know because of necessity, the building was sold and the interior has been disassembled, but the valuable art objects and liturgical objects have been rescued by a synagogue, and they're being curated in the Bet Midrash, and eventually that space may be redeveloped to more accurately reflect the original space. It's remarkable to bring the mural and the ark together, because these were the two congregations that didn't speak to each other. Well, they did speak to each other, but they were rivals for so long, and now their two great art creations are cheek by jowl, very close. So the Copper Ark is remarkable. Flax, Rabbi or Cantor Flax, carved a little wooden model. Let me go back just a second. Here it is, which is now, these are before the restoration, but you can see it restored in the other room. And this little wooden model, you wouldn't know that it was going to be created in metal, but it's painted sort of gold, so you think that he wanted to have a rich feel to it, but it could have been painted wood. But when his congregant Morris Wool designed it and built it, it was all in copper instead. And let me just go forward. No, let's go back. So this is where we'll settle for the lower image. I like to think, yeah, it's a copper, but it's actually, maybe it's the first ark ever built out of textile or fabrics, because it was a creation of flax and wool. So anyway, okay, that's my little joke for tonight. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Okay. I told this to Aaron and his wife earlier. I didn't get no laughs. So this is good. This is good. I like this crowd. Okay. I'm going to keep an eye on the time. I'm already going over. Okay. So the iconography is what I told you about the temples and everything, and then in the center you see the rising sun in the mural, and these lions supporting the 10 Commandments. And that's the same thing we find on the ark, the top of the ark. The lions are actually carved in wood and presumably by flax, not by wool. And they're these wonderful rampant lions with their tongues sticking out, looking very vibrant. These are the Jewish people, the lions of Judah. They're supporting the Torah, the commandments, and they are also defending it. And the tablets are in the store. They come from Mount Sinai, from God, the Israelite people. They're stored in the Ark of the Covenant, which is in the tabernacle. Then they were in the temple. The lions Arks, defending, and then here they are in the synagogue. So we get this kind of joining of these different elements. Okay, I'm going to jump ahead. So this is an idea that the congregation has. It costs a lot of money. If anyone wants to support that, that's great. I'm not a paid spokesman for that, but I think it's a great idea. Trying to recreate a space that's a little more accommodating of the Copper Ark. The Copper Ark right now, in order to fit the space temporarily, has been beautifully installed, but the steps, the 3 steps leading up to it have been cut off. And of course it doesn't soar the way it did in the older synagogue. They're not going to be able to recreate the whole synagogue, the whole size of it, but the idea is to build an extension off the Beit Midrash to create a higher level ceiling so the ark can breathe. I actually think it's very possible because any congregation, any place that could move the mural from Kai Adam, and that was quite an operation. It took many years and a lot of money, but mostly sweat and tears. I think they could do this as well. Okay, so very quickly, I mentioned that I'm still looking at synagogues to find out what else is out there. So a lot of other synagogues have gone through the same vicissitudes as Ohavi Zedek. So this is a synagogue I visited a few weeks ago in Peabody, Massachusetts. I didn't even know it existed, Sons of Israel. It's not in any books or anything, but it's a little synagogue. You see it on the right, the way it looks today. This is an old picture of it, and you see it's quite like Ohavi Zedek. And inside, it too has a magnificent ark. And this is by an ark by a craftsman I've been researching for the last 2 years named Sam Katz. And he came from Ukraine and settled in the Boston area. And we know that he designed and built about 20 some arks, and we've located a lot of them. But unfortunately, after photographing this a month ago, the congregation called me and they said, it's a good thing you've been here because we're thinking of selling the building and we don't know what to do with the ark and we don't know what will happen. So this is a changing, transient history, and we have to do what we can to protect and save things as we will. Yesterday I was in Montreal and I got to visit a synagogue I've long wanted to see. It's the Solomon Temple, or better known as the Bag Street Show, and it was built in 1922. It has these very homely paintings of the zodiac signs and of the Har Sinai and Mount Sinai and of Rachel's tomb. And this is interesting because it has a massive ark here. And in 1922, this ark was moved here from another synagogue that had to be torn down because they were tunneling in the city and the building was destabilized and had to be demolished. So this sense of moving things and trying to save things, it's nothing new. Jews have been doing it for a long, long time. And you take with you what you can, you save with what you can, and then you sort of document what you can't. This is a remarkable, you probably can't see this, sort of dark, but for those of you who are straining, it's a picture of a buffalo. And this is the zodiac sign of Taurus. But these zodiac signs from the 1920s in the synagogue in Montreal, they look like they've been taken out of a Scenic Canada calendar. And we have the stags, and we have the buffalo, and it's really quite, but very, very, they're not as finely painted as Benzine Black. I wouldn't say they're crude, but they are simple, let's say that. Okay, I'm going to skip this next part of the talk because it's already late. And I want to just jump to the end. What I was going to include in this part of the talk, and you'll find it online because I've given some other talks like this, are some of the old world antecedents. And there are lots of examples. Again, 20 years ago, 30 years ago when I began this work, we didn't have any examples of surviving wall painting from European synagogues. And now we have many examples, but most of them are extremely fragmentary, like this one from Rimonov, or this one from Chernivtsi in Ukraine, where I might be next in July, actually seeing this building. Yes, I may be crazy enough to go to Ukraine. And but they're all fragmentary, nothing like what we have here with the Mural Shul. So as I said, the Mural Shul is outstanding both as an example of surviving American work, but also it reminds us of what was more common in the old world. And this is a link from Chernivtsi or Chernowitz in what's now Ukraine. It was Bukovina. in olden times, Austria-Hungary. And then here's a painting that we've lost. I believe we've lost it. This is a photo from the 80s of a mandolin by Benzion Black from High Autumn that didn't survive the transition. But he was a musician and actually part of a mandolin orchestra here in Berlin. So these are old world examples, and there are many of them now, and it's quite an interesting history. But I want to just jump to the very end. There's really 3 talks here. That's right. I can't. But this is a congregation I'm helping right now in Chelsea, Massachusetts. It's the Walnut Street Shul, and there they have it was the largest Orthodox shul in Chelsea. There used to be more than 20 synagogues, or there were 18 synagogues, I believe, and this is the one of only 2 that still survives. And it's lavishly painted, but mostly decorative painting, not the kind of rich iconography that we find at High Autumn. And just for comparison, up top, we have the birds of Benzion Black, which you can see outside, and these very elaborate peacocks from the Walnut Street Shul. And if you remember the sunrise coming up over the Ten Commandments in High Autumn, here we have the sunrise coming up over the edge of the ceiling, the Walnut Street Shul. This was done a little later. This was done in the 1920s, and clearly also a trained painter like we find with High Autumn. Okay. And then lastly, this is a project I'm working on now, and Rick Kirshner's actually involved in all the conservation work. In this research, trying to find new examples or unknown examples of wall painting in American synagogues, I get leads. And when we were doing the mural, I had an article in the forward, and it was on NPR and the New York Times, and people would call and write. And one person said, there used to be a mural in the attic in North Adams, and they sent me a little picture that came out of an old congregational history of the synagogue that's now North Adams, Williamstown, in the successor building. And I made a note of that, and then later on, a few years later, working with a historian and genealogist out of Boston, Carol Klingon, we made an effort to actually try to find this mural. And Carol was able to pin it down because she does the congregational histories. And then we arranged a visit in 2019, I think just before the pandemic, might have been 2018. And it's a synagogue, it's a house. It was turned into a synagogue and only used as a synagogue until 1910. So then it's been an apartment, used as apartments, some would say sort of slummy apartments, for the last century. And it's undergoing another ownership change right now. So this seemed to be an opportune time to try to rescue this mural. So I was able to visit it with Carol and photograph it in 2019. And this is what you see. A very different animal, so to speak. No, same animal, lions. And by the way, no Jewish food here. We don't eat loin of lion or anything like that. It's just lions. But this is more folk art, or it's traditional art, but it's folk. It's just done in sort of Conti crayon on this pediment. There wouldn't have been a floor there. This was the top of the sanctuary that was down below. And they're waving little American flags. And we're able to date this pretty carefully, pretty surely to about 1898, which makes it possibly the earliest example that we found. And we think that it coincides with the Spanish-American War. And there's a newspaper article from the local newspaper in North Adams, which says that the local Jews they really hate Spain because of what they've done to the Jews over so many years, and they're really, like patriotic. So, this is a very important instance. So this is happening. We're now doing kind of reinventing the lessons of Burlington and the Lost Mural. Fortunately, this is a little bit smaller and not going to be quite as expensive, but it's still a complicated project. And this mural is going to be cut out of the building probably this fall, and we're still raising some money, but I think it'll get done. and it's going to move to the Yiddish Book Center in Amherst, Massachusetts, which is a great home for it. So, you know, this is a continuing saga. It just Jewish art, it's just a gift that keeps giving, and you just find more everywhere you look because most people have never looked before. And for those of you who are Jewish out there, don't keep going and saying there's no Jewish art, good, bad, and different. Jews did make art. Jews did make art, and we have museums full of it, but they're not, these days, they're not showing it. It's all sort of contemporary performance. It's another subject. And for those of you who are not Jewish and have never encountered Jewish art before, it's an opportunity. These are unusual examples, but there's a lot of other stuff out there, and a visit to the Jewish Museum in New York, or, the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston now has started a Judaica gallery. My friend Simone Di Nebbia is this curator there. You'll see some beautiful things. So, you know, lots of opportunities to go forward. Thank you. I know I've gone a little long, but thanks for your patience, and I can answer questions now or just later. You can find me, and if any of you want to continue if any of you want to make this a conversation rather than a monologue, you can contact me. I'll give you my email, and I'm happy to answer questions going forward. So thanks very much. Good night. Oh.